So think about this for a second. What if, what if the absolute most important piece of writing you will ever do in your entire professional life isn't, a sprawling, carefully cited master's thesis?
Right. Or some massive policy report.
Exactly. Like, it's not a 50-page report that took you 6 months to draft or, I don't know, a beautifully plotted novel you've been agonizing over on the weekends.
Yeah, we tend to put those things on a pedestal, right?
We do. We really do. But think about the writing that actually dictates the trajectory of a business, or literally the survival of a product. What if the most high-stakes writing you ever do is just a simple 35-character text ad?
Yeah.
Or maybe like a 2-page sales letter that you send to a highly targeted mailing list.
When you frame it like that, I think it sounds almost absurd to people who have spent years in traditional education, but it is an absolute reality.
Wait.
Every single day, we see businesses live or die, and we see careers just, skyrocket or completely stall out based entirely on a few carefully chosen words.
100%.
And yet, if you look at the way we are trained, despite how critical this skill is to modern commerce, most people are never actually taught how to write for specific, measurable results.
No, never. We're taught to write academically, right? Like to impress a professor.
Exactly. Or we're taught to write creatively to express our inner emotions. But we're almost never taught how to write commercially to persuade a complete stranger to take an action.
Yeah, and you can really see the results of that gap in training. I mean, if you're listening to this right now, just think about the last time you received a piece of B2B marketing or, opened a promotional email that just made you groan out loud.
Oh, I get about 20 of those a day.
Right. Reading bad commercial writing is essentially like being trapped at a dinner party with a deeply insecure narcissist.
That is the perfect way to describe it.
You know exactly the dynamic I'm talking about. They corner you by the appetizers, and they just drone on and on about their own achievements, their company's history, their proprietary internal processes.
Using all those buzzwords.
Yes. They use words like synergistic and revolutionary, and they never once ask about you. They never address your life, your problems, or your needs.
You aren't engaged at all.
No, you are actively scanning the room, looking for the fire exit.
Yeah, just desperate to get away.
And good commercial writing is the exact opposite of that dynamic, which really brings us to the core mission of our deep dive today. We are going to extract the ultimate practical toolkit for writing words that actually persuade, sell, and connect.
And it's such a crucial toolkit to have.
It really is. So we are basing this entire exploration on a foundational text. It's called the Copywriting Sourcebook by Andy Maslen. We're going to look at the mechanics behind mastering everything from like a multi-page direct mailer to a tiny hyper-compressed web link.
And Andy Maslen's work is just the perfect lens for this because he strips away all the pretension that usually surrounds the advertising industry.
Oh yeah, there's a lot of pretension there.
So much. We aren't going to talk about color theory today or brand vibes or, winning industry awards in Cannes. We are going to look strictly at the underlying psychology of the reader.
Because that's what actually drives the action.
Right. Why do certain arrangements of words bypass our natural skepticism and make us click or buy or subscribe? And conversely, what are the specific cognitive triggers that make us instantly hit the delete button or navigate away from a page?
Which happens in milliseconds, by the way.
Milliseconds.
Mhm.
Because if we look at the environment we are operating in today, this age of just absolute suffocating information overload, getting past a reader's spam filter is harder than it has ever been.
Yeah, and to be clear, we don't just mean the algorithm in your email client.
No, exactly. I mean the highly evolved, ruthless psychological filter in a person's brain that is constantly searching for a reason to ignore you and move on to the next stimulus.
Yes, the human brain is lazy. It wants to opt out. And to really grasp the philosophy we're going to unpack today, I think you have to understand who Andy Maslen is. Because his trajectory completely dictates his methodology here.
It really does. It's not your typical Madison Avenue story.
No, not at all. If you read a lot of marketing literature, you get used to authors who started out in some lofty ivory tower studying abstract marketing theory at an elite business school, or people who walk straight into a massive global agency.
Right, the Mad Men types.
Exactly. But that is not Maslen. He's actually a psychology and anthropology graduate, which When you think about it, it makes a lot of
That
sense.
makes perfect sense.
Because effective copywriting is essentially applied anthropology, right?
Yeah.
It's the study of human behavior, motivation, and tribal signaling.
Yeah, it's observing what people actually do, not what they say they do.
Right. But after he got that degree, he didn't go into academia. He worked as a cook in an Italian restaurant.
Doing real manual work.
Yeah. And then he worked as a sales rep for DIY products. He was actually out there in the physical world trying to convince hardware store owners to buy physical objects,
Face to face.
dealing with real-time rejection, long before he finally transitioned into direct marketing in 1986. And eventually, he set up his own highly successful agency, Sunfish, in 1996.
And that stint as a DIY sales rep, that is really the skeleton key to understanding this entire book.
Tell me more about that. Why is that specific job so important?
Well, he started in the actual trenches of human commerce. When you are standing face to face with a business owner, trying to sell them a literal pallet of drill bits, you learn very quickly that they do not care about your corporate mission statement.
Right. They definitely don't.
And they do not care about your clever wordplay. They care about their margins, their customers, and their time. Maslen knows what visceral rejection looks like. He knows the exact psychological friction involved in getting someone to part with their hard-earned money. And he wrote the Copywriting Sourcebook largely because he possesses this really vivid memory of the sheer, unadulterated panic of his very first official copywriting job back in 1986.
Oh, I read about this. This story is so stressful.
It's terrifying. He was a junior employee, and his boss tasked him with writing a direct sales letter. And he was told he had to fill 2 entire sides of A4 paper with compelling, high-converting copy.
2 whole pages.
2 whole pages. And it had to be on his boss's desk before lunchtime.
I mean, just imagine that.
He had no templates. He had no mentor guiding him. He just had a typewriter, a blank page, and a ticking clock.
I think anyone who writes for a living, or even just occasionally has to draft a high-stakes company email, feels a phantom spike in blood pressure just hearing that story.
Oh, definitely. Sweaty palms, just thinking about it.
Just staring at the blinking cursor, feeling the immense pressure of needing to generate revenue out of thin air. So he essentially wrote the definitive guide that he desperately wished he had possessed on that stressful morning.
Yeah, a survival guide, basically.
And that crucible of direct sales leads us perfectly into his central thesis. Maslen argues, with zero apologies, that copywriting is not about winning creative awards.
No.
It's not about sounding corporate. It is certainly not about writing beautiful, flowery prose that shows off your vocabulary.
Sure.
It is, first and foremost, a commercial tool. A hammer is designed to drive a nail. Copywriting is designed to drive a sale.
And that is the spine of his entire methodology. If you strip away everything else we discussed today, the foundational truth is that human psychology does not change.
Right.
Technology changes, obviously. The platforms change. We go from print magazines to direct mail to search engines to the social media feeds. But whether you are writing a print ad in a 1990s trade journal or a highly targeted digital ad on a modern search engine, the core mechanism operating inside the reader's skull is identical. You must appeal directly and relentlessly to the reader's self-interest.
Yes. WIIFM.
Yeah.
What's in it for me?
Exactly. And you must do this using plain, clear English, and the entire endeavor must be structured to drive a measurable action. If you lose sight of the reader's self-interest for even a paragraph, you lose the reader entirely.
But wait, I do struggle with this absolute uncompromising rule against anything that isn't direct, measurable action.
How so?
Well, how does Maslen account for the massive players? If you talk to executives at Nike or Apple or Coca-Cola, they spend billions of dollars on copy that is purely about feeling.
Yeah, brand advertising.
Right. Apple isn't putting, click here to buy an iPhone 15 right now on a massive minimalist billboard. They just show a striking photo and maybe 2 words that evoke a vibe. Or Nike runs a 2-minute television spot that is basically a poem about perseverance with no direct buy now link or tracking code anywhere in sight.
Sure, we all know those ads.
So is Maslen arguing that the most successful marketing companies on earth are doing it wrong? Or is there a fundamental difference in the game being played there?
That is the crucial distinction, and it's where so many small and medium-sized businesses bankrupt themselves.
Wow. bank
Oh,
refs.
yeah. Because Maslen is drawing a very hard line between brand marketing and direct response copywriting. Nike and Apple are playing a different game. They are multi-billion-dollar, multinational monopolies or near monopolies with practically infinite marketing budget.
Right, they have cash to burn.
Exactly. Their goal is massive cultural osmosis. They are trying to associate their logo with an abstract emotion, like athletic excellence or creative rebellion.
Right, so that 3 years from now, when I happen to need running shoes, I subconsciously reach for the swoosh.
Exactly. But Maslin's point is that 99.9% of the people reading his book or listening to this deep dive do not have an infinite budget.
Yeah, not even close.
And they do not have 3 years to wait for a return on their investment. If you are a B2B software company or a specialized consultancy or a mid-sized retailer, you need to know that the $5,000 you spent on an ad campaign generated $15,000 in revenue this quarter.
So, if a mid-market CEO tells their copywriter that the goal of their new expensive ad campaign is just to, quote-unquote, raise brand awareness, what is Maslin's advice?
Maslen says you should immediately put down your pen, pick up the phone, and cancel the ad space.
Just cancel it entirely.
Cancel it. Because his argument against awareness for non-monopoly companies is just devastatingly logical. He asks, where exactly are you raising this awareness from, and where is it going?
Right, how do you measure it?
If you run an ad and you cannot measure the impact of that specific text, if you cannot reliably count the responses, the clicks, the physical orders, or the qualified inquiries generated by those exact words, then how on earth do you know if the copy was actually good?
You don't. You're just guessing.
You are essentially throwing money into a black hole and hoping the universe rewards you. Maslen enforces discipline. Copy must have a measurable commercial goal. You are not a novelist entertaining an audience. You are a salesperson operating through the medium of text.
Okay, so if we accept that premise, that our only goal is measurable commercial action, we run into the immediate, practical problem of human attention.
The biggest problem of all.
Right, because you can't sell a reader anything, no matter how incredible your product is. If they don't stop scrolling or stop turning the page in the first place, you have to arrest their momentum. And that requires us to examine the actual mechanics of how people consume information.
Which is where a shocking number of writers fundamentally misunderstand the tools at their disposal.
What do you mean?
Well, they view the headline of an ad or the subject line of an email as a summary. They think it's like the title of a textbook chapter, simply announcing the topic.
Oh, like Q3 financial update.
Exactly. Or worse, they view it as a stage to perform a clever pun or an inside joke to show their colleagues how witty they are. But Maslen strips the headline down to its rawest functional mechanism.
Which is what?
The headline has exactly one job. Its only purpose in existence is to stop the reader from turning the page or scrolling past and force them to read the body copy, period.
Just to buy attention.
Yes. It doesn't sell the product. It doesn't build the brand. It just buys you 3 more seconds of attention. And the first sentence of the body copy. Its only job is to make them read the second sentence.
I love that. I was looking at Maslin's approach to headlines, and it really reminds me of the mechanics of a bouncer at a highly exclusive nightclub.
Oh, that's a great analogy.
Right. When you walk up to the door, the bouncer's job isn't to play the music for you.
Oh.
The bouncer isn't there to mix your drinks, and they certainly aren't going to stand there and explain the architectural history of the venue to you.
Definitely not.
Their sole function is to evaluate you, determine if you belong inside, and get you to step over the threshold.
Oh.
Once you are inside, the bartender and the DJ, which is the body copy, take over.
That's spot on.
And Maslen gets incredibly frustrated with copywriters who try to make the bouncer mix the drinks. When a writer uses a headline to indulge in abstract wordplay, they're essentially high-fiving themselves for being clever, while the reader, who didn't get the joke or didn't see how it solved their immediate problem, has already physically moved on.
It's a total failure of empathy. You have to deeply understand the cognitive state of your reader.
Right.
Let's paint the picture. They are busy. They have like 14 tabs open on their browser. They have a looming deadline. Their phone is vibrating. And fundamentally, as consumers of information, they are inherently selfish.
Very self-evident.
They are scanning the world looking for threats or advantages. So Maslen uses a ruthless diagnostic tool for headlines called the so what test.
The so what test. I like that.
Yeah. If your target reader can look at your headline and instantly think, so what? Then your headline has failed mechanically. You haven't presented a tangible advantage.
So how do you fix it if it fails?
Maslen doesn't just offer vague advice here. He provides a highly specific, almost mathematical formula for transforming a weak descriptive headline into a powerful, psychologically compelling one.
Okay, let's walk through that formula because watching the mechanics of a sentence change step by step is fascinating.
Let's do it.
Imagine we're trying to sell a service that negotiates car prices for consumers. Step one of Maslin's formula is simply to state what your product actually does in plain English. So a writer might start with, it saves them money when they buy a car.
Right. From a purely factual standpoint, it is accurate, but from a psychological standpoint, it is inert. It's clunky and distant.
Okay, so what's step two?
Step two, we need to reduce cognitive friction. We cut the preamble, we get rid of the it and the structural buildup, and we jump straight to the core action verb. Now, the headline is, saves them money when they buy a new car.
Okay, it's sharper, it's faster to read, but it still feels like it's talking about someone else. Like I'm reading a report about a group of people.
Exactly. Which brings us to step three, which I think is where the real magic happens. Maslen says to change the pronouns. You change them and they to you.
Oh, okay.
So the headline becomes, save money when you buy your next new car.
When I look at that shift, it's not just a grammatical correction. Changing it to you forces the writer out of the role of a third-person detached observer and into a direct eye-to-eye conversation with the reader.
Completely.
It shifts the entire power dynamic of the sentence. Suddenly, you aren't talking about a demographic, you're talking to a human being.
And that pronoun shift is the foundation of radical empathy in writing. But Maslen adds one final layer. Step 4 is the kicker.
What is it?
He suggests adding the phrase, and now W, an easy way to, at the very beginning of the sentence.
Oh, wow.
So your final optimized headline is, and now W, an easy way to save money when you buy your next new car.
It's a staggering difference from where we started. If you compare, it saves them money when they buy a car, to and now W, an easy way to save money when you buy your next new car, the mechanics are totally transformed.
They really are.
Like now injects immediate temporal urgency. An easy way removes the anticipation of friction or hard work, and the rest of the sentence delivers a massive, undeniable benefit. There was absolutely no room for the reader to say, so what, to that.
Zero room. It's a lock.
But I also noticed in the source material that Maslen doesn't demand you use this rigid formula for every single piece of copy. Like, he knows that sometimes curiosity is a more powerful hook than a stated benefit, provided it is deployed correctly.
Yes, the curiosity gap.
There is an example in the text from a subscription renewal letter he wrote for Top Gear magazine in the UK that highlights this perfectly. The headline on the envelope was simply, "People who think dolphins are cleverer than McLaren engineers."
That is a masterclass in exploiting the cognitive gap theory. The human brain literally hates an open loop.
It does. It drives us crazy.
When you read an unfinished sentence like that, especially one containing such a bizarre juxtaposition, dolphins versus the elite automotive engineers at McLaren, your brain demands resolution.
You have to know.
You literally have to open the letter to relieve the psychological itch of not knowing how the sentence ends. But what makes it brilliant, rather than just cheap clickbait, is the targeting.
Right. It's very specific.
It doesn't rely on blind, generic curiosity. It is perfectly calibrated for the very specific psychological profile of a Top Gear reader. It appeals to their specific worldview, their appreciation for engineering, and their specific, slightly cheeky sense of humor.
Because if you sent that headline to subscribers of a marine biology journal, it would fail miserably.
Oh, it would bomb.
Because it would violate their tribal signaling. The marine biologists would be offended on behalf of the dolphin.
Exactly. They'd throw it right in the trash.
So the functional takeaway for you listening here is spell out the main benefit immediately using the now, an easy way, framework when you are selling a direct solution. But if you use curiosity, ensure the curiosity is deeply intertwined with the specific identity of your target audience.
That's the key.
Do not use generic, "Ooh, look at this shocking secret teasers that have nothing to do with the actual product." Because while that might get a click, it generates immediate resentment when the reader realizes they've been tricked.
And resentment does not convert into sales. You are buying attention, but you must buy it honestly.
Okay, so we've executed the bouncer's job perfectly. We've used an incredible headline. They are hooked. And they have stepped into the club by reading your first sentence. Now the DJ takes over.
The body copy.
Right. How long do you keep the music playing? How long do you keep them reading before you ask for their money?
This is such a fascinating topic.
It really is, because it leads us to a concept that completely contradicts almost every piece of modern colloquial marketing advice you will ever hear. We need to dismantle the myth of keep it short and explore the counterintuitive, massive power of long-form copy.
If you walk into almost any modern startup or talk to an inexperienced digital designer, they will repeat the same mantra as if it is an indisputable law of physics. They say, nobody reads anymore.
Oh, you hear that everywhere.
Everywhere. They will cite some debunked statistic about humans having a shorter attention span than a goldfish. They will argue that because we live in the era of TikTok and Instagram Reels, every piece of written communication must be stripped down to a striking visual image and maybe 10 words of hyper-punchy text.
Make it snackable, they say.
Yes, snackable. It is the dominant philosophy.
It really is. If you're listening to this, think about how often you've heard a colleague say, we need to cut this down. It's too much text. People will get bored. We have developed this profound systemic terror of asking our audience to actually read anything longer than a tweet.
And yet, Maslen dismantles this entirely, not with philosophy, but with cold, hard, historical, and contemporary data.
What does the data say?
He points out that split testing, which is running two ads against each other and measuring the actual revenue generated, reveals a consistent, undeniable truth across decades. A 10-word ad rarely outpulls a 100-word ad.
Really?
And a 100-word ad almost never outpulls a 1,000-word ad.
Okay, let's really interrogate the mechanism there, because on its face, that sounds completely counterintuitive. Why would a busy, distracted person in the 21st century willingly read a 1,000-word advertisement?
To understand why, you have to look at the psychology of buying friction.
Okay.
If someone is genuinely interested in buying your product, not just casually browsing, but actually experiencing the problem your product solves, they are hungry for information.
Right.
Imagine you are about to draw up $3,000 on a highly specialized, pressure-sensitive diving watch because you actually do deep water dives.
Okay, high-stakes purchase.
Right. You don't want a snappy 10-word slogan about owning the ocean.
No, I definitely don't.
A slogan does not keep you alive at 200 feet below sea level. You want all the details. You want a 1,500-word essay on the exact tensile strength of the titanium casing.
Give me all the specs.
Exactly. You want to know the history of the manufacturing process, the dimensions of the bezel, the details of the warranty, and testimonials from other divers. When a person is preparing to part with significant resources, their brain requires massive amounts of data to justify the decision.
Justified to themselves.
To themselves, logically and socially, to their spouse or their business partners.
It fundamentally changes how you view the audience. You are not writing for the disinterested person casually flipping through a magazine or mindlessly scrolling a feed.
Exactly. Forget that person.
You don't care if that person gets bored and stops reading because they were never going to buy anyway. You are writing exclusively for the highly motivated person who has the specific problem your product solves. Maslen talks about his museum of pride versus his museum of shame when he evaluates advertising. He looked at highly successful, massively profitable direct marketing campaigns from major agencies and even the highest converting Google landing pages.
And what did he find?
He found they routinely deploy well over 300 words of body copy, sometimes stretching into thousands of words.
Because those words are doing the heavy lifting of dismantling objections. Every time you ask a human being to spend money, their brain throws up defensive shields.
Of course. It's too expensive. I don't have time.
Exactly. The practical takeaway here is vital, and it's something you have to actively defend against designers who just want a pretty page. Do not arbitrarily chop your copy to pieces just to create white space.
White space doesn't sell.
No, it doesn't. You must write everything you can possibly think of that will logically and emotionally secure the sale. You have to actively anticipate every single psychological objection the reader might have.
So if you know your reader is going to think, this software is too expensive, you cannot ignore that. You need a 200-word paragraph right there in the text, breaking down the ROI and proving that it actually costs more not to buy it.
Exactly. Hit it head on.
Or if they were thinking, I need to justify this purchase to my procurement department, you need to provide them with the exact rational arguments they can copy and paste to their boss.
Then the ammo.
Right. If you cut the copy for aesthetic reasons, you leave those objections unanswered in the reader's mind. And an unanswered objection always results in a lost sale.
Every single time.
So, okay, if we are following this advice and we are committing to writing a 1,000-word sales letter or a massive scrolling landing page so the buyer have all the details they need, how do we prevent them from falling asleep?
That's the real challenge, isn't it?
It really is, because let's be honest, the default setting for most long-form business writing is basically a cure for insomnia.
So
If you write 1,000 words of standard corporate jargon, no one will read past paragraph 2. To make long copy work, you have to ruthlessly assassinate what we can call the corporate voice.
This is perhaps the most pervasive disease that infects modern B2B and corporate copywriting.
The disease of the corporate voice.
Yes. The worst, most ineffective writing on the planet happens when it is committee-driven, what Maslen calls the board of directors effect.
Oh yeah, I've lived through that.
We all have. When an organization sits down to write a brochure or a website, they are terrified of sounding small. They want to sound authoritative. They want to sound like a dominant market leader.
So they use big words.
Right. But because the text has to be approved by the marketing manager, the legal department, the VP of sales, and the CEO, all the sharp edges, all the personality, and all the actual human empathy get aggressively sanded down.
Death by 1,000 edits.
Exactly. They end up with a document that sounds pompous, incredibly dull, and entirely self-congratulatory.
It's so true. Corporate jargon is essentially a defense mechanism. It's like a squid inking the water to confuse predators.
That is a brilliant image.
Organizations use phrases like synergistic customer-centric solutions to obscure the fact that they don't actually know how to articulate what their product does differently than the competitor's product.
Exactly. They hide behind the jargon.
It is exactly like someone deciding to wear a tuxedo to a casual beach bonfire.
Oh, man.
Right. They think they look incredibly important, sophisticated, and wealthy. But everyone else at the bonfire just thinks they look uncomfortable, unnatural, and completely out of touch with the reality of the situation. It creates a massive emotional barrier between the speaker and the audience.
And Maslen reserves a deeply passionate hatred for this kind of corporate jargon. He points out that words like solutions, revolutionary, unique, or phrases like replatforming our service offering are linguistic empty calories.
Empty calories.
They mean absolutely nothing to the reader. They don't paint a picture in the mind. He argues that even the CEOs who demand this kind of language are bored rigid by it when they are forced to read it from other companies.
He was so ironic.
Right. This happens because the writer, consciously or subconsciously, is designing the copy to impress their internal boss, rather than trying to connect with the external customer who actually holds the credit card.
The book highlights some hilarious but tragic examples of this in corporate brochures. You open up a highly expensive, glossy brochure for an IT consultancy, and instead of showing the product or the people, the agency has selected these bizarre, abstract, completely irrelevant stock images.
Like what?
You'll see a macro photograph of a stack of smooth, perfectly balanced Zen pebbles.
Oh, the pebbles. Always the pebbles.
Always the pebbles. Or a close-up of a tiny watch spring. Or like a brightly colored Amazonian tree frog.
What does a tree frog have to do with IT?
Nothing. And this completely disconnected imagery is paired with meaningless text like delivering customer-centric, best practice solutions for the modern paradigm. It's like they're speaking an alien language that has never actually been spoken out loud by a human being.
And this brings us to the mechanics of language itself. To cure this, Maslen advocates for a return to plain English, but he goes deeper into the cognitive mechanics of why plain English works.
Tell me more about that.
He strongly advises writers to favor short Anglo-Saxon words over longer Latin or Greek derivatives.
Let's really dig into the mechanism of that, because it's not just a stylistic preference, is it? It's rooted in cognitive psychology and how the brain processes text.
Exactly. Let's look at the mechanics of the English language. We have this fascinating dual-layered vocabulary. On one hand, we have the earthy, immediate, foundational Anglo-Saxon words like stop, go, buy, help, let.
The simple words.
Yes. These are the words we learn as children. They are deeply embedded in our subconscious. On the other hand, we have the elevated multisyllabic Latinate words that entered the language later, often associated with prestige, law, and academia.
Like terminate instead of stop.
Exactly. Words like terminate, proceed, purchase, facilitate, permit.
Right.
When business professionals sit down at a keyboard, they put on their business suit and instinctively reach for the Latinate words because it signals prestige and education. But cognitively, those words create immense friction.
It slow you down.
Yes. When you use a word like facilitate instead of help, the reader's brain has to burn slightly more calories to parse the sentence. It slows the reading speed down. It introduces a micropause.
And in copywriting, momentum is everything.
Momentum is everything. You want the reader sliding down a greased chute toward the buy button. Every multisyllabic piece of jargon acts like sandpaper on that chute.
I love the grease chute analogy.
Maslen's point is that you aren't trying to sound like a 12th century aristocrat. You're trying to remove friction. Don't say prior to when you can say before. Write as if you are having a normal, relaxed conversation across a table with one single intelligent person.
If you wouldn't say a phrase out loud to a friend over coffee, you have no business putting it in your copy.
Exactly. Read it out loud. If you stumble or if you sound like a robot, rewrite it.
Okay, so we have our foundational strategy. We are writing clear, conversational, benefit-driven copy. We are ruthlessly answering objections with long copy when necessary, and we are avoiding jargon like a plague.
That's at the core of it.
But if we're applying this across the board, does that mean a press release sounds exactly the same as a tiny Google AdWord? Obviously not.
No, definitely not.
The underlying strategy of empathy remains, but the tactical execution must shift wildly depending on the environment. We have to look at how the medium itself alters the message.
Context is absolute king. While the core principle of radical empathy, appealing to the reader's self-interest, while that remains constant, the specific format you are writing for dictates your entire approach.
Right.
You have to step outside of yourself and understand the psychological state of the person in that specific medium at that specific moment in time.
Let's do a deep dive into how this plays out practically. The book provides incredibly granular templates for 14 different copywriting formats. But I want to isolate 3 distinct environments to show how dramatically the tactics must pivot.
Okay, let's hear them.
Let's start with press releases. If I am writing a press release for a new product, how does my mindset need to shift compared to writing a sales page?
Well, with a press release, you have to fundamentally realize that your audience is not the end customer.
Okay, who is it?
Your audience is a highly cynical, overworked, dramatically underpaid journalist or editor whose inbox is flooded with hundreds of identical, hype-filled emails every single day.
Right, they're just scanning for news.
Therefore, the cardinal rule of the press release is never sell. Do not attempt to persuade.
Wait, really? Never sell?
Never sell. If you try to sell to a journalist, their defense mechanisms instantly trigger, and they will delete your email without a second thought. Your job is to act as a reliable supplier of raw materials.
Raw materials.
You provide unvarnished facts. If you use a subjective, marketing-heavy word like groundbreaking, revolutionary, or disruptive in a press release, you have instantly lost all credibility.
Because it's hype.
Right. The journalist's heuristic, their mental shortcut, sees the word groundbreaking and translates it to, this is PR fluff, delete.
So what do you do instead?
You must ruthlessly deliver the who, what, where, when, and why. Provide a solid, usable quote from an executive, and let the facts be interesting enough on their own to warrant coverage.
It's completely different posture. You are stepping back and letting the data speak.
Exactly.
Okay, let's look at the second format, case studies. These are incredibly common in B2B marketing, but they are almost always terrible.
Usually just a boring list of features disguised as a story.
Right. So how do we apply Maslen's empathy to a case study?
A case study is an educational piece. It is the ultimate soft sell. The mechanism here is narrative proof. You are trying to prove your marketing claims not by shouting them louder, but by telling a story of how you successfully solved a problem for someone exactly like the reader.
Narrative proof.
Right. The structural flaw most writers introduce here is poor research. They treat the case study like a fluffy marketing exercise. They sit at their desk and make up a generic scenario.
Instead of talking to the actual client.
Yes. Maslen insists you have to treat a case study like investigative journalism. You have to get on the phone and actually interview the client. You need to extract real human quotes about the pain they were in before they found you.
The actual pain.
And you must provide actual, verifiable metrics and results. Did you save them 20 hours a week? Did you increase revenue by 14%? If a case study lacks specific data and reads like an extended, self-congratulatory advertisement, the reader will immediately feel manipulated and tune out.
It has to have teeth.
Exactly. The structure is basically the hero's journey. The client is the hero facing a massive challenge, and your product is simply the magic sword they use to conquer it.
The product is just the sword, not the hero. I like that. And finally, let's look at the most extreme, hyper-compressed environment. Search engine text ads, like Google AdWords.
Oh, this is the deep end of the pool.
When we move into the AdWords environment, you are stripped of almost all your traditional tools. You can't use a narrative. You can't use long copy to overcome objections. You have roughly 35 characters per line.
Very little real estate.
Maslen uses a brilliant analogy to describe the psychological state of the search engine user. He says, imagine trying to stop someone getting on a train just by yelling at them over the hubbub of a crowded railway station.
It is the perfect visual representation of the cognitive state of search intent. People typing queries into a search engine are not browsing leisurely.
No, they are rushing.
They are frantically scanning, they have a specific, urgent problem, and they are hunting for a specific match. You have to adopt what Maslen calls the telegram mindset.
The telegram mindset, meaning pay by the word.
Exactly. You have to brutally omit every single needless word. In this environment, you do not have the luxury of introductory pleasantries. You don't have room to say, we provide a premier service.
Right. Cut all that.
You just write the exact distilled name of the product that matches their search. If a user searches for sports injury therapy and your ad says, welcome to our premier physical health clinic, they will scroll right past it because it doesn't match their mental template.
Right.
Your ad needs to say sports injury therapy. It is hyper-distilled, benefit-driven reality. You meet them exactly where their brain is operating.
The functional takeaway here is absolute contextual awareness. Before you write a single word, you must know exactly who is reading the text and in what physical or digital environment they are reading it.
Context is everything.
Are they relaxed with a cup of coffee reading a multi-page direct mail letter? Or are they frantically searching on their phone while running for a bus? The context dictates the architecture of the copy.
Absolutely.
But regardless of the medium, whether it's a massive, intricately structured sales letter delivered to a home address, or a tiny 35-character text ad flashing on a mobile screen, Maslen insists that every single piece of commercial writing must culminate in one final, absolutely non-negotiable element.
The most important part.
If you miss this step, everything we have discussed today, all the empathy and the plain English, was a complete waste of time and money. We have to talk about the call to action.
This is where the rubber meets the road, and surprisingly, it is where an enormous amount of writing fails.
People just forget to ask.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
You must explicitly, clearly, and forcefully ask the reader to do something, and you must design the experience to make it incredibly easy, almost frictionless for them to do it.
We touched on this earlier regarding brand awareness. But many copywriters, especially those who view themselves primarily as artists or frustrated novelists paying the bills, they find the actual physical transaction of commerce distasteful.
Yes, they feel it's impolite to ask for money.
It's dirty to them.
Right. So they write beautiful, engaging, empathetic copy. They build a great argument, and then they just let the ad softly trail off at the end. They provide a web address in tiny font at the bottom and hope the reader will miraculously summon the initiative to figure out what to do next.
But the fundamental law of direct response is universal.
Okay.
If you do not explicitly ask for the order, you do not get the sale.
Never. The human brain, when left to its own devices, will always choose inertia.
It's like walking someone right up to the finish line of a marathon, giving them a high five, and then just turning around and walking away without telling them to cross the tape.
That is exactly what it's like.
You have to command the final step. The text gives some highly practical psychological levers for nailing this call to action.
Break those down for us.
First, you must introduce friction's opposite, urgency. Give them a deadline to act.
It's crucial.
Second, offer a specific incentive for acting right now rather than tomorrow. Third, tell them exactly, physically, what to do. Tell them what button to click, what phone number to call, or what form to fill out.
Yes. Don't make them guess.
And regarding forms, there is a fascinating psychological quirk Maslen points out about the language of the transaction itself. He strongly advises against ever putting the words order form in large letters at the top of a page.
That is such a subtle but powerful detail, and it perfectly illustrates his deep understanding of buyer psychology.
Why is order form so bad?
Because the word form implies bureaucracy. It sounds like work. It sounds like going to the DMV.
No, nobody wants that.
And more importantly, the word order immediately reminds the emotional brain that they are about to part with their hard-earned money. It triggers buyer's remorse before the purchase is even complete.
Wow, just that one word.
Just that word. You want to use softer, benefit-oriented, action-driven language. Instead of order form, use, yes, I want to start saving money today.
Oh, that's so much better.
The practical takeaway is to always, always end with a strong, clear imperative verb. Call now. Click here to download. Subscribe today. You must tell the reader exactly what their next physical action is, and you must leave absolutely no room for ambiguity or confusion.
Okay, so let's pull all of these threads together. What does this look like when we synthesize the tactics into a cohesive worldview?
It's quite a shift in perspective.
It really is. We've gone from the aggressive gatekeeping of stopping them in their tracks with a benefit-driven headline to the counterintuitive strategy of keeping them engaged with long, objection-crushing copy.
Right.
We've talked about stripping away the defensive armor of corporate jargon to speak in clear Anglo-Saxon English. We've adapted our mindset to the specific medium, from the cynicism of a journalist to the frantic scanning of a search engine user. And finally, we've discussed the necessity of demanding a clear action. How do these diverse tactical concepts synthesize into a broader philosophy of communication?
If you zoom out from the specific word choices and the A/B testing data, and you look at the underlying logic animating Maslen's entire book, it all fundamentally boils down to one defining concept.
Which is?
Radical empathy for the reader.
Radical empathy.
Yes, every single failure in commercial writing we've discussed today, whether it's the boring corporate brochure with pictures of pebbles, the spammy email full of empty hype, or the confusing website that doesn't tell you how to buy, stems from a single root cause.
The writer focusing on themselves.
Exactly. It stems from the writer focusing inward on themselves. They're focusing on their company's history, their own cleverness, their internal approval process, or their product features. Successful copy requires a complete psychological inversion. You must flip the focus entirely onto the person on the other side of the screen.
I think that is a profoundly clarifying way to view the profession. The coherent whole of Maslen's philosophy is that successful, high-converting copywriting is not an act of manipulation. It is fundamentally an act of service.
It's an act of service.
You are doing the hard work of identifying a real, tangible problem that a reader is struggling with. You are stripping away your own ego to speak to them clearly, plainly, and respectfully as an equal. You aren't talking down to them from a corporate pedestal.
Never.
And you are carefully guiding them, step by step, toward a solution that genuinely benefits their life or their business. It is facilitation, not coercion.
Precisely. And when you genuinely write from that place of radical empathy, all the tactical rules we discuss fall into place naturally.
It makes sense.
The corporate jargon naturally disappears because you realize your reader hates it and it slows them down. The copy naturally gets longer because you realize your reader is anxious and needs reassurance before spending their money.
Right.
The headlines naturally become clearer and punchier because you respect the fact that your reader's time is incredibly valuable. Empathy dictates the mechanics.
Which naturally brings us to the question of who this specific body of knowledge is actually designed for. Let's be completely transparent with you, the listener. If you are listening to this and your primary goal is to write a Booker Prize-winning novel.
Good luck to you, but this isn't the book.
Right. Or a deeply moving collection of abstract poetry, or a highly technical academic paper for a peer-reviewed journal. This is not the framework for you.
Not at all. The principles of academic or purely creative writing are entirely different, and frankly, applying direct response tactics to a novel would result in a very strange, very aggressive book.
That would be a weird novel. Buy this chapter now.
Exactly.
But if you are a marketer trying to increase your conversion rates, if you are a small business owner or a founder trying to figure out why your website isn't generating leads, if you are a freelancer pitching services, a corporate communications professional tired of your emails being ignored, or honestly, anyone who has ever stared at a blinking cursor on a blank screen, feeling that familiar knot of panic because you desperately need to persuade someone else to take a specific action, then this is your definitive toolkit.
Without a doubt.
If your writing needs to produce a measurable result in the real world, this is the operating system you need to install.
And it is a remarkably comprehensive operating system. I want to stress that in our deep dive today, we've really only been able to hit the high-altitude strategic notes. We've explored the psychology and the major shifts in mindset.
That's absolutely right. As we wrap up this conversation, I want to acknowledge that while we've covered the core philosophy, Andy Maslen's actual book is absolutely packed with granular, ground-level detail that we simply couldn't fit into this session.
So much detail.
He includes actual, highly effective fill-in-the-blank templates. He does extensive line-by-line breakdowns of highly successful ads, contrasting them directly with failed ads so you can see the exact points of failure.
That part is incredibly helpful.
He provides deep dive, step-by-step checklists for all 14 different copywriting formats, walking you through exactly how to construct everything from a formal press release to a targeted email blast.
This overview, as deep as we've gone into the psychology, really just scratches the surface of the practical application. If you are listening to this on YouTube right now and you felt this deep dive could genuinely help you accelerate your career or help you generate more revenue for your business, there is a complete unabridged audio version of this book available.
Yeah, and it's a great listen.
It is several hours long, and it covers every single chapter of the source text in immense depth. It includes the detailed explanations of the templates, the exact wording examples, and highly actionable takeaways for every single specific format we touched on today, and many more.
If you want to take that next step, you can find the link directly in the description below. We highly encourage you to check it out if you want to go deeper. Think of today's deep dive as a theoretical foundation, and the full audio will give you the actual line-by-line blueprints to build the house.
And as we sign off, we want to leave you with one final provocative thought to mull over.
What's that?
The next time you sit down at your keyboard, whether it's tomorrow morning or 10 minutes from now, look at the very last email, social media post, or business report you wrote for work. Read it back to yourself and honestly evaluate it.
Be really honest.
Did you write those words to make yourself look good, to sound smart, or to appease your boss? Or did you write those words to make the reader's life easier? The honest answer to that single question might just change the way you communicate forever.
That's a great place to leave it. See you next time.
What you just listened was the beginning of a full audio, way longer, explaining every single chapter of the book. If you would like to keep listening to the end and access to the full audio, you can access it with the link down below in the description and in the pinned comment.